Very good. So implementation done, all sorted, easy as that. Next step in the process is working out, well, what am I actually getting as a customer, or what am I actually delivering as a supplier? And I think in these days where lots of solutions are SaaS-based, software as a service-based, what we're actually delivering is a right to access software that I, as the supplier, am in control of. So where traditionally I would develop software and throw it out into the world and let the customers use it, subject to various kind of license conditions. Here I've actually got much more practical control over how I manage the software and how I deliver it. And so that means I can kind of update it more regularly and tweak it, generally across the platform or for specific customers. And it also means I can probably grant access to that software on a more granular or precise basis, depending on what my commercial model is. And so some of the things that we see, I guess, in terms of the basis that the software is being provided, is it based on the amount of data that it's being processed? It could be number of transactions that it delivers. It could be around things like numbers of users, and we are still seeing kind of flat subscription models being used as well in terms of the basis on which the use is being granted. Will everyone who needs it have access to it? So the things that both customers and suppliers are thinking about in this space is, I've got a customer, that's one entity, that's the person who signs the contract. Do they need their entire group to use it? Have they got a bunch of subsidiaries in various jurisdictions that might also need to have access to it? And how does that affect my business model and the way I'm going to charge, as well as my obligations, to deliver the service? Might not be group entities, it might be a whole bunch of third-party contractors within the customer that also need to have access to my software. That might be fine because I might be being paid more for each person who uses it or for each transaction that's being done. But on the flip side, are those contractors potentially my competitors? And are they getting a kind of window into my secret sauce by the back door, essentially, by being a contractor to my customer? So that's something to work through. And then how does all this sort of affect the commercial model and the price being paid? So one of the things that we're seeing more and more actually at the moment is suppliers wanting to do sort of revenue share based models. So actually share in the upside when their solution is being used by a customer to drive further sales, further transactions. So that's a nice way, I guess, of incentivizing both parties to make the solution work. And we're seeing quite a bit more of that, I think, in the market. The other point just to bear in mind in terms of access and payment is traditionally software vendors used to use audit rights quite significantly to go into customers, work out whether they've got the right license, if they're under licensed, charge a whole heap of extra fees on that basis. These days, the information flows sort of switched. So actually, as the SaaS vendor, I have a lot more control or a lot more access to know what my customers are doing with my product. And so that kind of audit right is not really being insisted on in the same way for lots of these transactions.
Yeah, and it's interesting because in some senses, the information flow needs to go the other way. And so at sometimes the customer may need to have a degree of understanding and access and reporting back to make sure that they understand how the system and how the solution is being used, and therefore that they are paying the right kind of fee for it. From a customer perspective, they need to take a step back and look at and make a serious kind of assessment as to how this solution or system is going to be used. Is it going to be used by one entity? Is it going to be used across the enterprise? And what does that enterprise mean? Have we defined what a related company is? Is that only companies that are wholly owned? Have you taken into account joint ventures or unincorporated joint ventures that might need to have access to it? Have they got the licenses that they need? How many independent contractors do you have within your organization? Will they need to access it? employees would be picked up, but independent contractors perhaps not. If this solution is being kind of woven into an offering that you make to the market, does it mean that your customers are going to need to use it? Do you have the rights to give those customers the right to use it and sub-license it? All of those sorts of things need to be thought about as part of this. And then on top of that, in terms of the kind of charging mechanism, are there volume discounts for for number of transactions or amount of data, and how does that step change occur? And is it clear that if you hit that next volume, when that happens and what the pricing is? What have you assumed about kind of hitting those different volumes, and what happens if, as part of that, you've assumed that you will own, these entities and an entity is sold? Does that entity still have a right to use it for a period of time? Does that volume kind of continue to be able to be counted as part of your total volumes? If you acquire an entity, what process is there involved in onboarding, and how does that extra entity then become part of your calculation of what fees you end up having to pay? All of those things are things that you need to think about as part of kind of looking at your fee and right to use model.